There's plenty to think about before you buy a home computer.
Electronic games being heralded by folks in the trade as this year's holiday bestseller.
Children have skipped school or stolen money to play the games.
I'll be looking at the electronic game craze.
And at the end of the tape, I'll be back to tell you how to safeguard your computer.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. That was a quick jump to the music. Welcome back to Streamer News. This is the first time we're doing it at my managed main setup here. We have a lot of changes going on here on the desk setup, and I'm still getting everything tweaked. And I am the genius that is streaming from a release candidate of OBS Studio, which you should not do. It should not be used for production. It should be used purely for testing. I am not using it purely for testing. I am using it here as my main install because things work out that way sometimes here on Epos Fox. Welcome to Streamer News. Today we have the new setup along with a couple different camera angles. So of course we have the normal chat topic split going on with the new track matte stinger transitions in OBS 27. I've got my iPad set up here to show you some specific videos when we're talking instead of just showing it in a tab, just because. We've got the bird's eye view cam. This is the AverMedia PW513. Got the exposure just like perfect. It looks wonderful IMO. And you've got my full desk setup, not finished, but you know, on display, including Windows 98 rig is finally alive and well. We have the overhead rig for when we do unboxings. It's kind of crooked at the moment. I'm still working on finalizing it here. And I think that's about all we have. Yeah, I think we're doing all right. I think the stream is running. Everyone seems to... I also have chat on my teleprompter now, so I can look at you and look at chat at the same time. Pretty cool. Welcome to Streamer News, everybody. I am stoked to be back on this show, get it going semi-regularly. We should be ramping up more soon, and hopefully I can make the changes I wanted to make to officially launch Season 3, which didn't really happen, so we're still doing that. I see Big Sir. Oh yeah, got the Mac Mini M1 on the ultra wide over here. So we got lots of changes going on in the studio. I now have a huge array of stuff for capturing things here. We finally got AC installed in the studio, so I'm not gonna sweat to death to get this show going, which is part of the reason it was on pause, because as we moved into spring, it started getting really hot and I didn't have cooling in the studio, and so I was getting quite toasty. As a little bit of housekeeping, if you will, make sure everything's working here. Yeah, everything seems to be running smoothly. Very nice, very nice. So a little bit of housekeeping here. Of course, we do have the Samsung Q9U review that went up since the last stream. If you've been wondering about that microphone, that review did go live. A couple people missed it, so I just wanted to go ahead and mention that. We also had another review go live, and that was in the form of the Elgato Camlink Pro, which I'm actually using right now for this stream, which is pretty cool. And so that also means that I could technically, right in this scene here, go on and do a little bit of swoop and switch straight to the iPad, or even get like the triple view going here. Not that you care about that. But we do have that going, and that has been running as my main capture card here, which I quite like. So you can check the link to the full review in the description below if you're watching the VOD, or hopefully mods will be posting it in chat there. Of course, I did get the price wrong. It is actually $360, not $350. I was told wrong. Thanks, Steggy. And then, of course, we do also have the OBS version 27 release candidate, the beta testing we are doing right now. And that is what I'm streaming this with as well. Playlist link will be posted. I have 4 videos currently up on the subject, going over the track matte stinger transitions as well as undo. We're going over source-specific stinger transitions, fixes to dual GPU setups and laptop users, things like that, and then an overview of everything you need to know from this specific update. I will probably at some point have a 5th video coming, which will cover kind of a best settings guide for the new update, just to try to get that out there. So should be pretty neat. Tommy Callaway says, been using my Stream Deck a bunch, think it's crazy useful. Heck yeah, I have a new mounting system that is 3D printable that a buddy of mine is selling for the original Elgato Stream Deck that allows me to mount it up on some friction arms and stuff. I am super stoked. I can't show it yet, but I will check my Twitter. I will have links to their Etsy shop for that linked below because it is absolutely sick. Go ahead and get the next thing queued up on the iPad here. I don't have a smooth way of getting my iPad stuff queued up when I'm not the one messing with it. But yeah, that's also our first topic today, of course, was OBS Release Candidate 27. If you missed it, OBS is currently beta testing their latest update, which comes with some major fixes that have been requested for a very long time, including undoing and redoing, along with some other things. It still has some crashes, as I have found when I'm deleting scenes, and it has some issues with browser sources and chroma keying due to some internal pipeline conversion to sRGB, gammas, and blah, blah, blah nerd speak. But they're working on fixing that and should have that fixed up very soon. Also, if you missed it, speaking of updates, for our second topic here, the GoXLR finally got an update. For real, it finally got an update. Unlimited color customization for the LEDs. You now have a fader and manual level control over the line out, which we did not have before. More controls for the cough button mute, as well as you can finally tell it to minimize on startup so that it doesn't just stay on your screen whenever you reboot Windows. I know that sounds tiny, but so many people, myself included, were annoyed by that and super stoked to, to get that implemented. So I will have a full video coming next week about the update, as it is pretty awesome, and it's kind of setting the groundwork for getting more updates in the future, because effectively the GoXLR team kind of got gutted a little bit last year, and then they had production issues, of course, because COVID. Everyone else did, and so they're back. It's not the same team, but they're developing updates, so that is pretty sick regardless. Moving along, we have some news from Twitch, which seems like a bad thing, but this is something YouTube does all the time, in that they have finally implemented some form of machine learning, some form of bot detection to detect when follow and view botting occurs, and have been removing the accounts. And they have identified 7.5 million plus accounts on Twitch, which is just mind-boggling. They have identified over 7.5 million accounts. Actually, that says MM, so I don't actually know that means million. I don't know what that means. I'm going to assume it was a typo in million. But they have identified a metric buttload of accounts that breaks Twitch's terms of service and do, view botting and follow botting and stuff. And as such, we have seen a lot of big streamer channels losing massive amounts of followers as a result of this, like hundreds of thousands at times, which, again, seems like a bad thing, but again, this is something that YouTube does regularly. So Twitch, this is like the first time they've ever done this. Whereas with YouTube, they do this every quarter or every couple months, basically. And so it used to be like we call it a purge, a bot purge or something like that. And we'd see a big drop all at once. And now they do it more kind of regularly so that it doesn't just happen at random. And so it's not giant hits anymore. It's, subtle hits over time. And this is a good thing. This means that they are cleaning up the platform, trying to combat botting and things like that. But, of course, you will see a lot of channels that lost a ton of followers or lose concurrent viewers or what have you. And I can understand how that can be frustrating. However, it's worth keeping in mind, those accounts, those followers were never real. So it only helps you to have a more accurate follower count, even if you lose some numbers. And I did want to point out that just because you see someone mentioned XQC, they lost like 3 million followers. They're one of the biggest examples of follower drop-offs. You shouldn't necessarily assume that this happens because they asked for it or they did it to themselves. There has been this weird trend, and I don't understand it, but there has been a trend over the past few years of someone somewhere view botting and follower botting a lot of other people that don't want it or don't ask for it, to troll them or to artificially support them. I don't know. But don't necessarily assume that they're doing it themselves. I don't want people to go like looking at stats and being like, oh, you follower botted someone or something, because I don't think that's accurate. But also it kind of identifies that follower counts on Twitch really mean nothing at all. Like, your follower count has no value on Twitch whatsoever. Your concurrent viewer count on average is kind of all that really matters, and sub counts if you want revenue. And so realistically, losing a bunch of followers doesn't hurt you anyway. But I did interestingly want to, words fail. I did want to note that it was interesting that they say specifically they will engage in enforcement when necessary, including pursuing legal action. So they may actually be taking down the actual sites or tools or whatever are being used to run these bots and things like that, which is pretty exciting. So, yeah, obviously, it sucks for anyone who thinks they had X number of followers or concurrent viewers, because those are going to go down from people who had those regular viewers in their chat and they weren't actively viewbotting, and they're frustrated by that. I understand. Sucks. Whatever. But ultimately, this is a good thing and cleaning up the site, and I am very stoked to see it. By the way, I wanted to give a shout out to Zulf Photography for this super chat. Thanks for your videos. They've helped me lots of times. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing with the help of the videos. Yeah. All right, for topic number, I don't keep track of numbers here. We got announcement of a House of the Dead remake with Forever Entertainment included, specifically for the Nintendo Switch. Now, I'm not sure control-wise how they're actually doing this just yet, because there aren't light guns for the Switch at the moment. But one of the, if I'm remembering right, one of the Joy-Cons has a little IR blaster that I think can sort of act in certain games like a Wiimote. However, I say that and there's no IR bar for the Switch, so maybe that's not the case. But I would like to see that this is done with some sort of actual, you know, light gun-esque tracking and not just tapping on the screen. And the problem we're going to run into here is the both handheld and, you know, TV nature of the Switch console being something that has to utilize both thumbstick controls, touch controls, or TV. And so that can be pretty frustrating. By the way, as a demo, since we are testing the new beta build of OBS, my air conditioner has just kicked on to help keep me cool. You can hear it in the background. You can speak up in chat if you find it annoying. But we can go ahead and flip on RTX voice. And now I have RTX voice enabled. I might not sound quite as good, but most of the air conditioner should be cut out here. So that is pretty neat as well. And of course, I first got indicated of the House of the Dead remake by Modern Vintage Gamer here. Thank you for the super chat, Coalition Gaming. Keep up the great work. Much appreciated. All right, moving on to the next topic. I am super stoked and also very frustrated by this. And that is, we received a firmware update for the PlayStation 5. You couldn't hear the AC before RTX voice was on? All right, let's turn it off then. All right, I have turned RTX voice off. Can you hear it now? If you can't even hear it, then even better. So the PlayStation 5 got a firmware update here, and we got a video from Digital Foundry talking about it. It introduces a couple new features for video output and a couple other things that they were talking about on the Twitter that I don't... Actually, I may have that pulled up here. I don't, whatever. But the big thing everyone's talking about is the storage woes with the PlayStation 5, because the PlayStation 5 launched with this whole custom SSD controller and a super fast, you know, SSD and all of that jazz. All right, people are saying they can't hear it, so we can just flip on RTX voice, and it's gone. So it released with the super fast SSD controller and super fast SSD and all of this, and they also put in a M.2 NVMe drive slot in the PlayStation 5, so eventually the user could add in their own with some sacrifice to the in-game loading speed or what have you. Unfortunately, they, to this point in time, which has been like 6 months since the release of the console, if not more, I think it's been 7 now, you still cannot insert a drive and actually do anything with it. And I think if you put one in, it actually won't even boot at the moment, which is insane. You could use an external drive for PS4 games. So I was actually able to just literally take the USB hard drive that I used for my PlayStation 4 that had all of my PlayStation 4 extended storage games on there, move it over to PlayStation 5, and continue playing the games on my PlayStation 5 as if nothing had really changed, maybe with some extra patches downloaded. You can now do this to move PS5 games to an external SSD for cold storage, to store the games there, but you can't move your save files over, and you still can't run games from any sort of extended storage. And so this has been incredibly frustrating, but you can at least back up your games if you have limited download capacity to be able to download it later. It's really frustrating because IMO, the PS5 is an incredible console, like in terms of what it can do, the games on it, things like that. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time with it, but there are still some weird limitations like this, and as you all are ringing off in chat, no 1440p support yet, which is incredibly frustrating. They have acknowledged that there is some demand for it, but have not yet committed to actually, implementing it yet, which is a little weird, a little frustrating, especially since Xbox can do it and has for an entire generation, but I don't know, man. It's really frustrating. The update does add a manual 120 hertz toggle to kind of get you a little bit fixed up and upgraded and things like that, but yeah, it's pretty frustrating. All right, you guys. It's not Paul's hardware. Don't be dissing my man John Linneman like that. Not cool. The dude is a legend. Jesus. I did want to also talk about Ludwig had his subathon finally end. It went on forever. I'm pretty sure it was just starting when I did my last streamer news, and we've skipped a week or two, and it was still going on. He ended it with about 282,000 Twitch subs, which beats Ninja's record for the highest sub count that Twitch has ever experienced. And it's something like $705,000 within 1 month. And that's just like on affiliate cuts, not even including the partner rate at which stuff would be cut and things like that. So pretty wild there. And I believe he said something about donating a lot or all of the portion, revenue from that to charity, which is pretty cool, but it's still pretty insane that someone on a stream can do something completely unhealthy, mind you, but end up with basically a stream revenue of $705,000 per month. It's just mind-boggling sometimes. Like, most people, myself included, don't make that in a year. I don't know, man. I don't know. Moving on to the next topic, Microsoft has announced a new webcam. And of course, this Tom's Guide article is clickbaity as hell. Logitech should be worried. Not really. Logitech is still kind of the household name. Even if Microsoft has done cameras in the past, they kind of stopped making webcams for a little while there. They are making what they're calling, and I think this name is kind of ridiculous, the Microsoft Modern Webcam. Which it looks like every other webcam. There's nothing super modern about it necessarily. It has a privacy shutter. It can record 1080p well, it's a 1080p camera. According to this article, which doesn't make very much sense, it boasts a 1080p resolution, but somewhere here it says it can record at up to 60 FPS, but will only be able to transmit at a max of 30 FPS. So what I am expecting this to mean is that when you're doing video calling through Skype, Teams, Discord, whatever, the mode that it engages on the camera is only 30 FPS. I'm going to assume 1080p 30. However, in OBS or whatever recording software, you should theoretically be able to record up to 1080p 60. I'm assuming that's how this goes. I don't really know for sure until we can get our hands on it. The wording on this is kind of crazy. It is only $70 though. It has a 78-degree field of view, which is not very wide. But a lot of people don't like the super wide field of view because, like, even in this current view, like, most of the screen space is not spent on my face. And while for a chatting, kind of hanging out scene, this works fine, when you're doing a game face cam, you don't want all this dead space in the frame. You just want it on your face. So there's that involved. But also, I don't know. It's only $70, so that's pretty cheap. I am disappointed though, coming from Windows, or coming from Microsoft, although it does work on macOS as well. Coming from Microsoft, it doesn't support Windows Hello, which is a little weird. Now, granted, the only real consumer-facing webcam that's viable on its own, standalone, that does support Windows Hello, as far as I know, is the Logitech Brio. They had some of the Intel RealSense cameras that released that would do Windows Hello as well, but otherwise, the Logitech Brio was really the only camera that did it. But it is kind of disappointing that this one won't do it. And I only say that because of the size. There aren't these sensors required to do Windows Hello built in here. It's just the camera sensor. You need the multiple other depth sensors and things like that to do it. So we'll see when it comes out. I have attempted to send a review request. However, it's Microsoft, so getting my email to the right place may never happen because it's a megacorp. But I have sent a review request for this to check it out. I have also sent a review request kind of back and forth with Anker because they released their new PowerConf C300. It's a $130 USB webcam that does 1080p. I'm not sure the frame rate because their specs aren't really explained well here. Supposedly it does some really cool low light stuff. It has a 115 degree field of view, which is very wide, as you can see here. And then they show the little like difference here. So the 78 here is essentially what the Microsoft camera has. And then this one can go all the way out to 115 degrees. Obviously, Linus Tech Tips mentioned that in their sponsored video for their studio tour and all of that jazz. They actually reached out to me back in March to review this webcam. I said, yes, I'm interested. They said, okay, they'd follow up closer to release. And now the email that they sent me from literally doesn't exist because Anker, despite being a fairly large company at this point in time, selling peripherals and accessories and cables and things like that, they still effectively operate as if they're one of those less than mainstream like Chinese knockoff companies that uses a bunch of disposable emails and stuff. And so I've sent an email to a new contact at the company trying to get that conversation continued, but we'll see. We'll see. The stream is still not sponsored by Sunkiss. Moving on to one more topic here before we get to the break. I think that's a good breaking point. MetroExodus is actually coming to Mac and Linux. Actually, it did about 2 days ago, which is pretty awesome. Both Mac and Linux. Don't expect it to be M1 native because M1s aren't designed for gaming, but I think this is important to highlight because while there are obviously Windows compatibility layer things like DXVK and the Wine stuff and all the stuff to actually game on Linux based on Windows games, I think it is very important to support developers and companies that take the time and make the effort to actually wait, my stream says no data. Am I dead? No, it says actually, I don't know what just happened there. My stream said it was offline. Anyway, I think it's very, very important to support companies that put in the time and effort to actually develop and release games for Linux. And I guess Mac, if you're a Mac gamer as well, although without Nvidia support, you don't get a whole lot of direct gaming performance. But regardless, it's MetroExodus. At this point, I feel like this game has been ported and re-released a bajillion times. A bajillion? That's a new word right there, coined by EposVox. A bajillion times. And, you know, you may be tired of hearing about it. But if you are a Linux gamer or someone who cares about that stuff, you should probably support it. That being said, someone just said in chat that it's slower than DXVK. So that is unfortunate. All right, we're going to get to a commercial break here real quick. And I got a couple things to unbox and check out for you guys. And we'll be right back.
PlayStation!
There's been a lot of situations where I, or commenters like you, have really needed a specific feature or update to OBS Studio that we just couldn't get prioritized by the devs. You know what's better than sitting around waiting for them to implement the feature you want? Developing it yourself and contributing it back to the project. To learn the skills required for that, I recommend checking out Brilliant. Brilliant is math and science enrichment learning, taking a more active approach to education, as many of these skills you learn by doing instead of just listening. They have daily challenges pulled from your ongoing courses that provide you with the context and framework to tackle each challenge and learn concepts through application. If there's a specific problem you'd like to learn more about, there's course quizzes and more detailed avenues to follow. If you get stuck or confused, there's a community of thousands of learners discussing those problems and solutions. This has been super key to me learning to pick up Python to enhance my projects, as it took me from a passing interest of, oh, that would be cool, to a proper learning experience and developing a new skill. To get started mastering your own dream skills, head on over to brilliant.org/EposVox to sign up for free. The first 200 people that use the link will save 20% off of their annual premium subscription too. Happy learning. While you're updating your installation of OBS, you should also consider updating your stream layouts with our sponsor, Nerd or Die. This is their sick new package, Amused. I love Nerd or Die's packages because they come with a variety of colors and configuration options that you can mix and match to make your own. Or, if you buy the full package, you get the After Effects files to really make it your own. It's easy to install and affordable too. Nerd or Die provides more than just a template, they provide the full stream experience. Head over to eposvox.gg/nerdordie and save 15% with my name at checkout.
Sega is rolling out a new video game console this week.
It's one world. Why view it through two windows? Panasonic introduces the 36-inch SVGA TV.
Alrighty, let's get the music back up a little bit here. Hopefully that's the same point it was before. No, Fanta tastes like I'm drinking candy. It tastes like pure sugar. Bad drink. Thumbs down. Also, apparently the DXVK or VK-D3D version of MetroExodus runs at 140 FPS on high, and the native on the same scene and settings are 80 FPS, which is pretty awesome that the community project could run that well. But also weirdly disappointing that native is performing worse. Usually native on Linux stuff performs a little bit better. Phantom Yosha says they wish the PS5 had DisplayPort so they don't have to buy a monitor with HDMI 2.1. You're not going to see DisplayPort on consumer hardware like that because HDMI is the standard for it. DisplayPort is realistically a niche, like, business/computer display thing. You're never really going to see it on a game console, I don't think. So we've got a couple unboxings here today. If I switch camera angles, we have, first and foremost, I realize this is not optimal compared to the other streaming setup, especially for something small, but hello, we have PCPanel. Now this was kind of a Kickstarter-y kind of thing, the community-backed project that released, or that was teased a while back. I had my order placed forever ago and honestly forgot about it, and it has shipped. So it just came like this, I guess. Now this looks like a mixer. It looks like an audio interface kind of thing, but it's not. This is basically a control dial system that only connects via a single USB-C cable and allows you to control the audio levels of specific programs in your system. So since there is really no way for Windows to currently allow devices or programs to map, you know, programs to different audio. Well, that sounds dumb. The issue of Windows audio is you can't just capture a specific program. You can't, like in OBS, you can't just be like, just hook my game audio, not the rest of my system sound, my Discord audio or whatever. And so that's why devices like the GoXLR exist, to allow you to still map out to virtual audio devices all these things and treat it like a mixer. This does not serve that purpose. This is purely a control device to give you more control over your system by allowing you to adjust the volume and balance of specific programs through the new Windows 10 based audio mapping stuff. But yeah, it's pretty neat, so I'll check it out. Ultimately, it's just about having more control over your system. If you want that, it is quite heavy. It's gonna stay in place, which is very nice. But we do actually have a mixer in for unboxing today as well. Which is a coincidence, not intentional or planned. This is the FLAMMA FM10. This is a USB interface that actually allows you to capture each of these on separate tracks, as far as I understand. I cannot confirm that yet. As always, wait for the review. But the big appeal of that is that it actually offered unique audio channel capturing, and I just realized I have no idea where my knife went. Yay, planning. We shall use my Google Pen. Either way, this is a not terribly priced. Oh, holy hell. That tape did not break. What in the world? I'm completely damaging this box here. There we go. There we go. Either way, this is a not terribly priced audio mixer. Connects over USB-C and can use USB-C for additional power. If we pull it out here, you can see you have two XLR inputs for capturing microphones or instruments. I believe this one can do high Z for instrument input. Then you have a stereo pair of 1/4 inch jacks, RCA, and then 2 sets of outputs. So you can go to speakers, studio monitors, or into your computer. And then it has USB as well as 5-volt DC, and it can work with the phone. On-off switch on the back there. You've got gains, levels, compressor and EQ just as a button. I believe that's controllable through software. And you even have a 3.5mm aux in as an alternative to the RCA. This is laid out kind of funky, but I loved the color scheme and want to check it out in a review. So we'll feature it at some point in the future. All right. So that wraps up the unboxings. I believe mods were posting that links to that stuff in the chat and it'll be in the description down below as well. Moving on to our news topics today. Let me make sure I am caught up with where everything is supposed to be here. Discord is going to block not safe for work servers on iOS. However, a lot of people are missing kind of the point of what was said during the article itself, in that Discord is actually allowing servers now to be marked entirely as not safe for work. So you can now completely make an entire, I guess, porn-based server, if you'd like, on Discord and mark them as an SFW or 18+. And this label will be a requirement going forward for servers that primarily feature this kind of content. Now, first and foremost, it will prevent users under the age of 18, assuming they didn't lie about their age, of course, from joining the server, but it also prevents them from being accessed on iOS devices due to Apple having restrictions for that. However, a lot of people are saying, okay, this will only block the servers that are entirely marked as this and not servers that just have a room marked for this. But they do say that the label will be required if the server is organized around these themes, or the majority of the server is. So if you just have one random room for that in your server, and that's how you run it for some reason, your server's fine. It's not going to be blocked. But if your entire server is based on this, you're going to have to do it, or they can ban your server, and it's going to be blocked on Apple iOS. I don't know what to tell you. It's something, I guess. Moving on, AMD has announced their new, I keep having my dark mode thingy for this. There we go. Their new AMD Ryzen 5000 series APUs. So we got the 5700G, 5700GE, 5600G and GE, 5300G and GE. So we're getting a higher tier APU this time around, which I am incredibly excited for. So this is an 8-core, 16-thread, up to 4.6 gigahertz APU, where previously the APUs were cool, but they were limited to a fairly low tier of processor compared to the other Ryzen CPUs. And if you wanted a higher spec Ryzen, you don't have an iGPU. This gets you both. So I am excited for these, especially for like streaming rigs and things like that. We now have a full 7, 5, and 3 tier set of the processors. I don't 100% know out of the box right now what the G versus the GE means, but this is very exciting regardless, and should allow some people some flexibility with using, you know, Ryzen CPUs in systems where you don't want a GPU, which again, for streaming rigs might be the way. I do have some content coming in the future when for streaming without a dedicated graphics card. Usually I recommend getting whatever CPU you want and getting a 1650 Super or 1660 graphics card, because then you have new NVENC and don't need to spend a bunch of money on a CPU. But at the moment, those graphics cards are very tough to find. And so if you want a, you know, a streaming rig that doesn't need a whole lot of parts at the moment, I don't know. So I am stoked to check these out. I don't know if I'll ever be able to at any point in time, because I still to this day have not tested a single Ryzen 5000 CPU, because I didn't get sent them and I have no reason to spend a bunch of my money on it at the moment. But I am stoked to test these out and see what they can do for streaming rigs. The FCC wants you to use their app to speed test your internet so that they can compare it to what ISPs actually rate your internet speeds at and things like that. It's available on Android and iOS. I find this a little weird because your phone is not necessarily going to get the best speed result for your service provider. Like the speed test I get on my phone is not great compared to, you know, the speed tests you can get on your computer. And so I feel like this is going to get them some misleading data, unless they're also just trying to get some, you know, mobile data speeds as well. It's just really weird to me. I don't really know entirely, you know, why, but I do like that they're, like, ultimately, the goal is for the FCC to start cracking down on ISPs that mislead about internet speeds and all of that jazz, and I am stoked for that, 100% on board. Finally, the FCC is doing its job. But doing it through a mobile app, just, like, they need a desktop site as well, I guess is what I'm getting at. This seems like a weird, like, specific launch. But it's part of their ongoing efforts and will be improved in time. So I am stoked to see where they go from there on that as well. Nori SS, shout out from dear Bauer. P.S. Your new setup is super cute. Well, thank you. Thank you for the super chat. Much appreciated. Hope your Friday is going well. Next up in topics, we have some Bitcoin news. But no, we're not talking about Dogecoin. We're talking about mining Bitcoin on the Commodore 64. Yeah, someone has developed a program to run on the Commodore 64 from 1982 to mine Bitcoin. Obviously, this isn't going to hash, you know, at any rate that would actually ever mine you anything worthwhile. But someone decided that they could, and so they would, and have developed a program to let you do it. Which I'm just sharing for the novelty, because that's just amazing that someone put in the time to do that, because yeah. Moving on to Nvidia news, we have a lot of Nvidia news. I'm actually dividing it up between a couple sections here. But first and foremost, Nvidia's latest GeForce driver update enabled Resizeable BAR for all 30 series GPUs, assuming you have your hands on one. And a bunch of motherboards have been rolling out Resizeable BAR support for the motherboards. There was some backlash against ASUS for not rolling it out on their older Z390 motherboards, but they have announced that they are now doing it on Z370 and Z390, as well as their Z490 and Z590. So this is exciting for those of you who want to use it. It's honestly not super optimized just yet. It's not something that has a ton of performance impact. I think Linus Tech Tips has posted a couple videos now about it, about download more performance. And it's like, yeah, in a couple games it does really well, in a couple it does worse, in a couple it does the same. But I think over time, this kind of thing will introduce more performance gains in the future, and hopefully performance impact, or performance impacts. Hopefully production apps will be able to get more performance benefit from it as well. Wrong application. Also, in that same driver update, they released they basically released the Code 43 restriction that they had on graphics cards that prevented Nvidia graphics cards from being able to be used in a virtualized machine. This is something you could kind of hack your way around and work around, but it was very annoying regardless for those of you who wanted to do virtualization and you kept running into the Code 43 error. However, again, this is something you could always patch out or hack out, and so it's kind of more, as Wendell explains it, a bit more of a political move rather than actually doing anything different at the moment. But we are hoping that it moves forward towards the VFIO and SRIO steps of actually showing the capability of using one graphics card in multiple virtual machines at the same time, which has a lot of performance impacts. I will just point you to Wendell's video on the subject if you want to learn more. We do have some more Nvidia news coming after the next few topics here. I wanted to space them out. Rode Microphones has their USB NT Mini, or NT USB Mini, which looks like a little Elgato Wave microphone. I didn't even know this microphone existed, but they have released the Wave Connect program for it, which basically acts as the Elgato Wave Link software, which gives you multiple audio tracks that you can all mix and master into your headphones. Like I said, I had no idea this microphone exists, but apparently it makes it a pretty good value for the under $100 price point that it sits at, which is very exciting, and I'm stoked to check it out. In the meantime, since it will be a while before I get to, I will point you to the Gaming Careers video about it, because he's already popped out a video on it. I'm assuming he got early access because it was like instantly, but it is effectively the Elgato Wavelink software, but for a Rode USB microphone, which is pretty exciting. All right, I also wanted to share some news about some acquisitions. So we have two acquisitions done by a company called Creative Solutions, which owns Teradeck, which is a company that makes video broadcasting hardware I've kind of covered them in the past. They make some like hardware encoders like you would see from Epiphan and things like that, as well as some other tools. They also own companies like Small HD, Wooden Camera, Amimon, things like that. They have firstly acquired Lightstream, which is a program I've mentioned a few times. It's a paid access streaming program that streams, basically uses the cloud as your streaming computer. So you stream, say, from your Xbox through the Xbox app. It'll stream to their service, and then you can add your webcam and your overlays and sync all that up without needing a streaming computer, and streams it out to Twitch or what have you. I feel like there's some latency concerns with that. I haven't really tested it out much myself, but I am excited to see what they can do with it and integrate it into the Teradeck hardware, which is pretty cool. But then they also acquired Quasar Science, which makes lights. If you've ever seen tube lights, you know, the RGB tube lights and things like that, Quasar was kind of the first company doing it. They used to always just be called Quasar tubes because of that. And I actually have quite a few of their just standard white LED lights that are Quasar tubes. And so they have also acquired that company as well to blend into their Vitech group of creative companies, including Lightstream and Teradeck and things like that. So hopefully this just means more stability and funding for the companies that have been acquired, and not anything shutting down of companies that people want to use. But for another list of companies involved in the Vitech group, there's also Manfrotto in there and Sockler. I use Sackler. I always say the name wrong, but I use tripods and mounts and stuff from both Manfrotto and Sockler. And there's Anton Bauer, which is an entire battery system, light panels. Like, there's a lot of companies involved. So hopefully it just means they keep making better products, hopefully not much more expensive products, and have more funding to back up their development, because all of the companies in here make really good stuff. So I purchased 2 new Elgato Multi-Mounts recently and have noticed that they introduced some quality of life changes to it since I reviewed it last year or the year before. Firstly, it appears the ball head has been improved and strengthened up a little bit. They have more of a metal threaded tap that looks a little bit more confidence inducing, seems to be a little bit better, higher quality. And they now ship them with 3 different cable strap, basically. Cable straps that go on the different thicknesses of the tube to run cables down it, which were not included in any of the multi-mounts I had before. So that's pretty neat, and it's nice to see that they're improving the product instead of just putting it out there and leaving it as it is, which is pretty nice. Now, jumping back to Nvidia news, Nvidia had their usual annual GTC presentation conference, what have you, in which they also revealed the RTX A4000 and 5000 GPUs. We already heard about the A6000, which has 48 gigs of VRAM. The A5000 has 24 gigs of VRAM. These are effectively the new Quadros. They're not called Quadros anymore. I don't understand why. But they are the new mid-range Quadros. The A4000 has 16 gigs of VRAM. The A5000 has 24, like I said. And they are pretty sweet looking and should be pretty powerful and come with the validated drivers and things like that for production apps. I can't remember if it was 2020 or 2019, but I actually tested the Quadro RTX 6000, I believe, versus my Titan RTX, and they were basically spec for spec identical for the most part, just validated drivers on the Quadro. And I did notice some stability in certain programs kind of being improved a little bit with the Quadro, but overall performance-wise, the Titan RTX that I have in my main production PC was basically on par, and so it wasn't worth the double price point to get the Quadro drivers. However, with the A6000 having 48 gigs of VRAM on top of higher specs, it's looking kind of appealing, but I would like to be able to just add it to my water cooling loop because I don't like their lower cooler design. But they're great hardware for production apps and things like that if you're working with a proper studio, not an independent creator who doesn't have budgets for that kind of thing. They also announced that they're making CPUs again. They are making microprocessors for servers based around ARM processors, which, as you know, they either acquired or have been working on acquiring since last year. ARM is now basically becoming part of Nvidia, and with that, they are making ARM-based CPUs for servers to compete with Intel and AMD for the first time in a very, very long time. The first CPU is named Grace as a code name, and it should work better with their graphics chips and work really cool for some AI stuff and a lot of stuff we'll honestly never see firsthand, but pretty neat regardless, as they are making big pushes towards AI workflows and things like that, which is pretty neat. They also announced a new AI. Oh yeah, this is the press release about the CPU again. They also announced a new design, collaboration, and simulation platform for enterprises called Omniverse, which implements some of those technologies. And this is kind of a culmination of what they've been showing in previous presentations, where it's this like weird high-tech thing we don't see any more about, such as the like game engine simulation stuff and all that. I'm very stoked to see what comes of this, but again, this isn't something we're going to see in our like hands anytime soon. But they had a lot of announcements for GTC. I think there's a couple others that I missed. But stoked to see this. They're also getting new tech that's involved in the video conferencing stuff. If you saw that last year, they announced that there's a new AI tech that will basically replace video compression for video calls and allow you to interpolate frames so that you're not compressing every single frame and you're keeping higher quality up. Some of that tech is finally coming forward as well. And so I'm stoked to see some of that come to life. We finally have a new release of FFMPEG version 4.4, codename RAW, which has a ton of changes here, of course, as it always does, because this has been in nightly testing for a very long time. But specifically, these two are my favorite features here, which is AV1 encoding support with SVT AV1 and Cineform HD encoder. Cineform being one of my favorite, one of my favorite mezzanine codecs that runs super lightweight, super fast, just has big file sizes, but is also slightly GPU accelerated in Premiere and things like that. We also have Intel QuickSync accelerated AV1 decoding, and I believe, yeah, another AV1 decoder that is all hardware accelerated only, not, not CPU bound at the moment. So that's unfortunate, but we're getting there. So we got, yeah, DXVA2, which is NVIDIA. So we got NVIDIA hardware accelerated decoding for AV1. We've got the VA API one for Linux, and then we got QuickSync as well. I don't know that we have a decoder for AMD just yet, but that is okay. Reaper Blog says the cam is focused on your mic. I don't believe it is, because I can see it detected on my eye right now. The mic is in focus because it's low contrast and sharp, but it's definitely staying focused on my face. Anyway, next up we have Logitech discontinuing production of their Harmony remotes, which is very unfortunate and very disappointing, because their Harmony remotes are really freaking cool. I don't even have their nicest one. I have one I received as part of a smart home upgrade video I sort of did forever ago, and it's really nice and especially useful for controlling a lot of my retro CRTs and things like that, which I don't have the original remotes for. Really cool products that I don't feel like there is a replacement for, and that is why I'm bummed out. At one point in time, it was not uncommon for phones to come with IR blasters. Like my Galaxy S4, I believe, had an IR blaster, and I could use it as a smart remote. Phones these days don't come with it. It's not a feature anymore, and so there's not really a replacement for the Harmony remotes. And so it's unfortunate that they're no longer selling it. The good news is that they are continuing support for them as long as their customers continue using it, according to Logitech. So new new updates or fixes rather, and things like that are still coming, and they'll still make sure that it works as long as people are still using it. So pretty stoked to see that. We do have an update from a thread or topic that we covered last show. Sorry, very sleepy. About the PS3 games and PSP games going offline and things like that. So we got an update from that news story once it was actually officially announced that people who already owned games on the PS3 store, PSP store, and PS Vita store will still be able to re-download their purchases for the foreseeable future, which is very, very nice. However, despite that, we already have evidence and a thread going of various PS3 games that are no longer downloadable or even patchable at this point in time. So, despite the fact that they keep saying that, or that they said that this wouldn't be the case, it is. So, I would start downloading any of your PS3, PSP, or PS Vita purchases now. Make any that you want to make prior to long before the July date, because I think we're just going to see more and more stuff fall off the store as we lead up to this, which is very disappointing. A little bit of an amusing story here. Activision is involved in a trademark dispute over the name Warzone, because there's a small little web game called Warzone. I honestly thought it was a little weird that Call of Duty went all in on this Warzone name to the extent of effectively renaming Modern Warfare to Warzone, because there are that name is used in other games in the first place. Even before Call of Duty, Halo 5 had a Warzone game mode that you could download even on PC, or not on PC specifically. And I always thought you should be able to download that as a free-to-play standalone thing on PC. Just play Warzone. And then Call of Duty is like, we have Warzone. And then they basically renamed Call of Duty to Warzone for that specific release. And now they're facing a trademark dispute because Warzone.com is a web game already called Warzone. So, just amusing regardless. So Intel quietly launches new ruler SSDs for the enterprise that are 15.3 terabytes of NAND on a big long stick of gum that slots in a little server, which is pretty sick. Now you may have noticed last year Intel did sell off their consumer NAND division, but continued manufacturing the enterprise storage. And so we got 15.3 terabyte, 8 terabyte, 4 terabyte, 2 terabyte, and 1 terabyte, 64 layer TLC 3D NAND SSDs, up to 3.1 gigabits per sec, or gigabytes per second read and write speeds, which is pretty impressive. A couple final stories here. We have Epic Games is hemorrhaging cash to deliver their free games and exclusives. This is something that actually Apple effectively released for them in an attempt to prove their case, and was like, look, they're not going to be profitable forever because they lost over $200 million in a year trying to make this happen, which is really interesting. It's not uncommon for companies to bleed a lot of money to throw at projects like that. I mean, that's what happened with Mixer. That's what happened with a lot of companies that were launching their own little TV streaming services. But I've continued to question the Epic Game Store's model for actually running a game store and competing with Steam. And while obviously there are people smarter than me that work there and that have thought about these things and whatever, I wonder if they actually have an effective plan to keep it profitable without sacrificing what is attracting people to the Epic Game Store. Because realistically, outside of Fortnite players, no one has a reason to go to the Epic Game Store other than the free games and the exclusives. And so if they can't negotiate that anymore because it's costing them too much money, people are gonna stop going there, theoretically. So I don't know. It's just hilarious to see that they're just like, yeah, we can do it better and bigger and blah, blah, blah. And Apple's like, bro, you're losing all of the money. All of the money. But I don't know. Lastly, Days Gone, continuing Sony's cycle of PS4 games coming to PC 2 years later. Days Gone is coming to PC with 21:9 ultra-wide support as well. So pretty stoked to see these games eventually move over. I do wish they would drop the whole 2-year exclusivity thing or 2+ year exclusivity thing, but it's pretty neat to see regardless. All right, everybody, that is this week's streamer news. Thank you for hanging out with us. I do hope you enjoyed. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below and in the chat. Hope you guys have a great weekend. We have a lot of cool stuff coming up very soon. May, I will say this now, May will be the launch of 2 major projects that we have been working on for a very long time. Both of which I think you will enjoy. One of which is actually merch. I can't talk about yet what merch we're going to have, but I think I have put in a lot of effort to make sure that it's not just my logo on a t-shirt or anything too ridiculous. Like, I wanted it to be stuff that people would actually enjoy, that are like truly on brand and things that I would actually enjoy. And so I really think that you guys are going to like the merch launch, but it's going to be a couple weeks until I can talk about it. It's going to be some good stuff. Join us over on Discord, discord.gg/ebosbox. Please, please, please join us over there. Hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you all next week. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Yeah.